Hi, welcome back. Sharp College Football. It's late on a Friday, but I got it's an odd one. I mostly cook at home, and when I eat out, sometimes I realize how much salt restaurants use, and sometimes that can really, like, on a day where you've recovered from a lot of flying and got up early and got into the gym, I was a little tired, so I had to rehydrate after becoming a piece of jerky from eating in a restaurant in order to do this. So now we're doing it now. We're doing it live now. I'm excited to preview the Buckeyes today. If this is your first rodeo with Sharp College Football, I'm Rob Bowron. I'm the econometrician behind Bowron, an advanced stat system for college football that's built on the same data that's provided to the College Football Playoff Committee. I say that because the data is nice, because it actually is checked and has some integrity before it gets to me. The stats you're going to see today are mostly from Bowron. They're all advanced stats. They're controlling for at least opponent, field position, and tempo. Sometimes they're controlling for more. There are some advanced-ish stats that were also included here. I will call them out and why I use them and why I think they're reasonable, even though they're not perfect. I'll never let reasonable or useful get in the way, or perfect get in the way of useful. So, not that we should not all strive, but I don't know. I'm not a Platonist. Anywho. We're counting down this time. The last couple seasons we've done sort of like 10-1, deciles. This time we're just going straight down from 1. I'm going to try to knock out as many of these as I can before the college football season starts. Took some time off in the off season. Feel pretty relaxed coming back. Actually sort of like college football again. Don't know if I really like Twitter again. I don't know if anybody ever really likes Twitter. I don't know. I think you sort of become accustomed to the presence of Twitter. Maybe not like it. Anyway, I'm rambling off on many tangents that are more about me and my relationship with college football and social media, college football social media, and college football quasi-media that I am about the Buckeyes, who are a really interesting team. And I think as we get into here, I talked about, the first couple teams that we've previewed. I mean, Georgia last season did put up a really big offensive number, but they've switched play callers going back to Mike Bobo, and I think that puts a cap on where their offense is likely to be. Brian Kelly, who when he had Steve Sarkisian at the helm, or not Brian Kelly, Nick Saban, when he had Steve Sarkisian at the helm of the offense, put up some huge offensive numbers. Of course, Lincoln Riley now now with Cliff Kingsbury, that should be a hoot. I'm possibly excited for what those two cook up with Caleb Williams, as anyone that actually likes football and not just their team should be. But Ryan Day is one of the guys within college football who, really in 2019, somewhat in 21, has put up some really big offensive numbers. And he's one of the guys as we run through here, and we're going to talk about this with Texas. We're going to talk about this with USC. You can talk me into Florida State and Mike Norvell. He's a really interesting offensive guy. We're going to talk about these guys that are, that have the opportunity, I think, to put up some really big offensive numbers, and really, I think, change what, the way we're going to talk, in that, we should also talk about Josh Heupel at Tennessee in that breath as well. Cause he did it last year. They did get an offensive number in beta rank over 2. Ohio State did not. But these guys have the opportunity to change the conversation. We've had that, in these past couple, and particularly the LSU and the Michigan preview, talked about that, like Brian Kelly and, Jim Harbaugh probably needed offenses to come back to earth a little bit in order to win a national title. They were never going to put together the kind of offense that was going to go out there and actually compete on the field with 2020 Alabama or 19 LSU or even Georgia last year. This is never going to happen. And so Now, I think that I think there's a legit possibility that there's, like that with the hires that Alabama made and Georgia made, that there's a possibility that like we might come back to earth a little bit. Look, USC's defense, I think Lincoln Riley and company are going to put up some big offensive numbers this year. They put up decent numbers last year. I think another year in the system for most of the guys on that offense that are not named Caleb Williams. Also, of course, having Kingsbury there is going to help, but that would change for USC, the defense still has to make significant strides. I think Ohio State's going to get there this season defensively. I think Ohio State, even if the offense doesn't break out, is going to be good enough to be in the conversation of like what we might think of in some ways as being something a little bit more like pre-2017 college football, where you have some really good offenses, you have some really good defenses. Teams are, it's not so imbalanced. Like there's just not there. That said, Ohio State is the first team that we're going to look at that could actually like take what we've been talking about and just blow it out of the water, because Day can. He's a really good offensive mind, and they can put up really, really big offensive numbers. But I think the question you have to ask with Day is, look, in 2019, they ran the ball incredibly well. They were number one in effective rush and beta rank. They had perhaps, I think arguably the most dominant rushing attack that anybody's put together in college football in a while. They were the only, they were within spitting distance of that impossibly good 2019 LSU offense. Right, like Day, and Day's definitely flipped it over to be more of a passing offense. He's really needed to fix his offense. The offensive line blocking just has not been there. It has not been a running back problem. Spoiler alert, like if you're watching this, you're probably aware of the fact that like running backs, it's not that they don't matter, but they're less important than blocking in generating a run game. And blocking and scheme. So, I don't think this has necessarily been a personnel problem for the Buckeyes at running back, so much as they just have not. And they've got, they replaced their offensive line coach last season. They brought in the guy from UCLA. I think that they are going to likely be able to like turn it around, maybe be able to bring the run game back and be more effective this season. But they're going to, I almost think Day's system's going to work better with that. I don't know if Day has an innovative enough passing scheme to get it done throwing the football. I don't think he's Lincoln Riley. I don't think he's Josh Heupel. I don't think he can do it that way. And that's okay. So long as they could get the run game going. If they get the run game going again, I think all bets are off. And, Ohio State could be one of the teams that like changes, like I said, like the paradigm that I've been talking about of like everybody sort of comes back to earth and like there's no juggernauts and, the teams that are in the number one position maybe are beatable by the teams that are in the number 4 position. That's what happens when you hire Mike Bobo. That's could happen, but if Ohio State really gets it rolling, it won't. And that's the teams we're going to talk about in this next cycle of teams are teams that have a potential to have a high ceiling, like a really high ceiling that I think like Georgia's probably got a lower floor than Ohio State. LSU probably has a lower floor. Michigan has a higher floor. Disregard. I just repeated it wrong. A higher floor for Georgia, a higher floor for LSU, a higher floor for Michigan for sure than the Buckeyes have coming into this season or the other teams. But Ohio State has a much higher ceiling because they still have an offensive coordinator that I think can make a big difference and put up some big numbers. So let's talk about it. I'm so excited to talk about this team. I get excited about all these teams because I really do enjoy college football, all of it. Not just the team that I root for. That's like, if you're watching this, you probably actually enjoy college football and not just, you're not just here to hear about your team. Anyway, Ohio State's is number 7 overall in coaching and development. They do a really good job Now they've had some trouble. The Kerry Combs hire was a bit of a disaster. I don't think that was Ryan Day's hire. I think that was a bit of an athletic department hire of like, hey, we know somebody that's perfect for this job. And it turned out he was not. Play calling was not his jam. Turns out, and I try to reiterate this to people, play calling is a skill. And with a first-time play caller, mileage may vary, and with Kerry Combs, it varied. So they, of course, got out of that. They finished at so they've done, but they still do. I mean, they recruit really well, but they, relative to what they bring in, they still put a tremendous product on the field. They were at number 4 in 22. They were at number 3 in 21. We've got them projected at 4 coming into this season. I mean, this Ohio State team has been a fixture at the top of college football. They're number 48 in Bill Connolly's returning production coming into next season. They return in particular a lot on the defensive side of the football. They sit overall at number 2 in recruiting. I know there's a lot of jabber about like Ryan Day not recruiting as well as people would like. I mean, Nick Saban had, certainly took the loss and got very, very mad and and replaced both coordinators and went back and brought in the best recruiting class in the history of ever with Alabama. But Ohio State's, up there in recruit. I mean, I don't think that there's any argument, and I don't think if you're an Ohio State fan, you should be complaining about the recruiting that Day's done. They're number 3 overall in special teams. And this is another one that, I mean, if you're going to compete at the highest level, you're going to need to hit on all cylinders. They're going to need to perform on special teams again coming in the next year. There's your head coach, Ryan Day. Let's hop over to the offense defense and run through the numbers. So last season, Ohio State finished at number 3. And you may be thinking, awesome, number 3. But they were at 1.7 in beta rank. Both Tennessee and Georgia finished over 2. So Ohio State was like in the metric space of beta rank, which also goes negative. There are some offenses that the way beta rank shakes out are less than 0 in what they bring to the table. But the entire metric space, Ohio State was about 87% as effective as the top offense, which was Georgia last season. That really hurt them. I mean, look, and I think they did a decent job against Georgia in the playoff game on defense. And I, in particular, I also think they did a pretty good job on, listen, last year's Georgia defense was not the Georgia defense from the year before. That said, it was still the best defense in college football. And I thought Ohio State had a pretty good game against them. They were number 7 overall in drive efficiency. They did a good job putting together long drives to put together points. Number 6 overall in explosive drives. They did a really good job of putting together explosive drives, putting up big plays. Number 3 in play efficiency. This is the least important of the core 4 beta rank metrics, but still matters. This is outside of explosive, your yards per play. Number 2 in negative drives. Excellent job avoiding 3 and outs, avoiding turnovers. But I mean, the main things that would move these numbers up, like they did a really good job avoiding 3 and outs, avoiding turnovers last year, is they need to be more explosive. They need to have better drive efficiency. You do that, they're going to put up more points. That's the way it's designed. All these things can compete compute what actually drives points per drive. But the big thing, I mean, the split here, as you can see, is like they're at 23 in effective rush. I mean, and they've had, if you were going to flip around and look at like the 2019 offense, they were in the top 15, I think, in overall effective pass. But they were number 1 in effective rush. I mean, I try to tell people, people always try to apply they try to take the lessons that they learned from the NFL and then just repeat them without actually thinking about them for the college game. You can put up a great offense in college football running the football. There's many ways to skin the cat. You can put up incredible offensive numbers in college football running the football. Ohio State did in 2019. But they've flipped it over and become a much more pass heavy offense. The trouble is they're a very, very good passing offense. I mean, CJ Stroud was excellent. They're not a great passing offense. And that's a problem if you want to put up really big offensive numbers. They were at number 1 overall offensively in 21. Of course, your offensive coordinator, Ryan Day. CJ Stroud hit 66.3% of his passes last season, 9.5 per. They got the ball down the field pretty well. I mean, look, the offense has become more sophisticated. Like, I mean, if you remember that 2019 game against Clemson, Clemson actually brought in an extra safety to help control the run game, really sat more in like a 3-3-5, and really stymied one of the turning points in that game when it looked like the Buckeyes were just going to run away with it. Brent Venables made a terrific adjustment, and was able to slow down the run game more. But what that 2019 offense ran into trouble with was they mostly had a passing game that was keyed off their excellent power run game. And so it was mostly like deep breaking option routes, and that ran them in trouble. They didn't have a short passing game that could really keep drives going. They do now, but they're just not as effective. I mean, it's just not as effective as what they were doing running the football. And I think that's something I'm interested to see what Day comes out with this season on offense, right? Like, cause look, I mean, like I'm throwing Day's name out there still as like a guy that can put up really big offensive numbers. I'm including him in the conversation with guys that have done it more than once, like Sarkisian and Lincoln Riley. I'm not 100% certain. Day did it once, and that's something, but he's got to do it again. He's got to put up some really big offensive numbers. And I'm interested to see if this is the year that he can do it, and yeah, he doesn't have a quarterback coming back. That's true. So, if you want to give him a little bit of a pass on that coming into the season, you're welcome to. But I do think that this is, this is going to be the year that I'd really like to see him. It'll be the second year with the offensive line coach in place. They did need to get that fixed. I want to see what he wants this offense to be. They were so good running the football. You brought in a new offensive line coach in theory to fix the run game. And yeah, you had CJ Stroud, but you're not the same. It's just not your bread and butter, man. So fix the run game and good things will come for the Buckeyes. I think Day, Chip Kelly does too. Their Day is a Kelly disciple. His offensive line coach he hired was the offensive line coach at UCLA. They need to, in order to make this offense, this current offense that they run really click. It is a power run game based offense. And what Day has that Kelly doesn't is of course just spectacular skill position talent. Like Chip Kelly just keeps turning it guys that you've never heard of at tight end into, NFL draft, or at the very least, amazing college tight ends will, that may get drafted, may not. I don't know. Chip Kelly's not all that interested in recruiting like Ryan Day is. Anyway, I'm excited. Like I said, I'm excited. They have to get better here. So Inns is going to step either Kyle McCord, a former 5-star recruit. He's certainly the most experienced. None of the backups have a ton of experience. Also, Devin Brown, former 4-star. He's a little bit of an afterthought, I would say, because, Brown was a guy they picked up late. He had been committed to USC. A guy, a 4-star out of Utah, had been committed to USC. I don't want to say, he's just he's in there competing for the job now. He's certainly a talented kid. He wasn't a guy that was probably number 1 on the Buckeyes board that season at QB for sure. But he's going to be in there competing with Kyle McCord. My guess is it's McCord. Brown's a little more athletic. They're both strong arm kids. Look, I don't want to say this is I'm knocking Brown. He's certainly got the scholarship. They definitely had him on their board. I think maybe that year would have been Quinn Ewers that they had committed. And maybe then he just jammed. I can't quite recall. I should have written that down. Anyway, my guess is that it's going to be McCord in there. But I think one of the things that's really going to drive them, and help them improve is the line, where Football Outsiders, their offensive line yards. This is an attempt to measure how much of the rushing yardage you should assign to the line. Ohio State was at 2.72 line yards last season. They graded out at number 67 overall on line yards. Michigan, who was number 1 overall last season in effective rush and beta rank, they were at number 19 overall in the line yards. I mean, so like it's not all like that. This metric's not perfect, right? The line yards metric's not perfect. It's decent. It's an advanced-ish metric that attempts to isolate something. I don't think it does a great job of the isolation, but it attempts to isolate. And I do think Ohio State's going to have to move that metric and improve it, and something to keep an eye on this season for sure. They had a 4.9% sack rate that graded them out at 39 overall. That's not, I mean, sack rate's a little more of a quarterback stat than it is on the offensive line. That's not surprising. Ohio State does like to push the ball down the field. You're going to take some sacks sometimes when you do that. They're at 97 in returning production from Bill Connolly. They've got 57% returning for next season. That's a decent amount. I mean, look, they're going to lose some really big players, some guys that won in the first round of the drafts, of course. But when you're the Buckeyes, like Alabama and the other teams that we talk about in this realm, like you are expecting to be able to replace guys with other guys that were highly recruited and are ready to play. Now on the defensive side of the football, they did make progress. I mean, so Jim Knowles is your defensive coordinator, turned Oklahoma State's defense into just a monster. One of the more respected DCs in the game. I still think is a really good hire for Ryan Day. They were at 34 in 21. The part like Kerry Combs didn't get to finish that year. But they did make some improvement. The expectation is they're going to make more improvement this season, so my expectation for this defense is a top 10 defense this coming year. They certainly have the talent to get there. They were at number 11 in drive efficiency. They did a pretty good job finding ways to get off the field, avoid giving up points, but 25 in explosive drives, that one hurts a bit. Giving up too many big plays for sure. Look, play efficiency, as I said, it's the least important of the core 4 beta rank metrics. That is, the yards per play. But they need to improve that. I mean, look, they try to play, don't give up big plays, find ways to get off the field type of defense. But it hurt. They definitely struggled a little bit, at times last season. I do think they had a decent game against Georgia. Negative drives, though, this is a really good number for them, 16 in negative drives. They found ways to force turnovers, force 3-and-outs, force the offense to do bad things. But they really were, and where they got smoked, they had a big run pass split. Number 4 in effective rush. They really were pretty good against the rush last season. And I think something in that because Michigan sort of took the top off them a couple times in that game. Burning them, like taking advantage of some breakdowns in coverage. Just 52 in effective pass. They have to get better defending. This is it. This is the ball game for Ohio State coming into this, defensively and just coming into the season, is they have to get into to be get into the top 10. They just have to get a lot better defending the pass. When a team like Michigan, which was not a great passing offense at all, and should have been a really good matchup for it should have been such a good matchup for this Ohio State defense, given that they are so much better defending the run than they are against the pass. And they got exploited. And then as they had to adjust to the passing, they ended up giving up some rushing yards. In Michigan, the best offenses are still going to largely be able to do what they want in college football these days. They've just got some work to do. But it has to start in the passing game. It has to start there so that Ohio State's not having to worry about what's going on in the secondary. They're going to be better defending the run. If they're able to do that as well, too, you're not going to have to cheat and try to drop back too much into coverage. Look, a really big problem for Ohio State has not just been, the coverage hasn't been there. I think they really lacked some athleticism in the secondary last season. they haven't had a really strong pass rush in a couple of years. I know that their defensive line coach is regarded as an excellent recruiter. He certainly put some big names in the NFL, Chase Young, Bosa. It's got to get better. They have to turn it around, and they have to actually produce on the defensive line, not just in stopping the run, which they did last year really well. They did not do a great job getting to the quarterback. They got to do that. They've got to be more effective in that place in particular. They were created disruptive plays on 26.3% of plays last season. That's a good percentage. That shows up in their negative drive stat. And they, forced 3 and outs on 29.9% of third downs. That's another good number. I mean, you see that in the negative drives as well as their drive efficiency. They found ways to get off the field. They got to do better. That's it. Like, you're going to know where this Ohio State team stands early on in the season with 2 things: how well they're running the football, how well they're defending the pass. That'll tell you a lot. So the schedule sets up for them. So they are going to play an FCS team this season. So add 1, because you'll only see 11 games here. So that puts our projection at 10.65 wins, and out of the 9-game conference schedule, almost 8. So Ohio State's, they've got some, they're going to be favored in most all of their games. The only game that we don't have them favored in currently is at Michigan. But Indiana's fallen way back to earth since the days when they had Kane Womack at DC and Kalen DeBoer as the offensive coordinator. I don't expect this to be a particularly close game. Ohio State should be able to come in and roll pretty much in there. This Western Kentucky, the one though, this is actually a really fun one. Barring completely stubbing their toes, walking face first into a glass, door, turning the ball over 3 times, they should handle Indiana. Western Kentucky's going to be fun. And then you're an Ohio State fan. You're like, why is there going to be fun? And if you're a college football fan, you probably actually know this. If you're watching this, you might know this. Like, Western Kentucky throws the ball around. They're going to have a new offensive coordinator this year. They're probably going to have a new quarterback this season. Western Kentucky's still going to chuck it around, put up some points, test you. This is actually going to tell us something about where the Ohio State secondary is going to be. How does because with this Western Kentucky team, for a team like they're not going to have great field position. Ohio State's going to put up a bajillion points on them. Western Kentucky is the question, and it may not be the total points that they end with in the game, because like Ohio State's defense may find ways to use the long field they're going to have in this game to their advantage. The question is, like, does Western Kentucky move the ball, throwing the ball around? It's not about points for Ohio State in this game. Like, if you want us to believe your secondary's fixed, that your pass rush is fixed, you better show it here. Notre Dame. This is our first chance to talk about the Irish. So as I talk about the fact that, like, Alabama and Georgia went out and made offensive coordinator hires that made me scratch my head a little bit. Nobody made a more head-scratching offensive coordinator hire this offseason than Notre Dame, who whiffed on getting Andy Ludwig away from Utah, which would have been a great hire for the Irish, and instead promoted internally Jared Parker, who got fired at West Virginia for being really bad at being an offensive coordinator. I cannot figure out why this happened. Notre Dame just should be better than this. It's a bummer. It is probably it just stinks, because I think Marcus Freeman is a guy that's going to learn a lot from, he's probably a guy that needed to go down and, have a chance to be a head coach somewhere else before he got his first big job. So he maybe learned some lessons. It is unfortunate that he's having to learn all of this on the fly. I don't think this is a great hire. I don't think this is going to set him up for success at Notre Dame. I think this game, and again, barring like 2 or 3 turnovers, I think this game is going to be a bigger spread than this. This game should finish wider than this. It might finish at something like 3 touchdowns, 21 points. I don't expect this game to be terribly close, barring a couple of Ohio State turnovers. Maryland is a game that could give Ohio State fits again if they can't figure out I mean, look, Josh Gaddis is getting a new offensive play caller at Maryland. I didn't love the Gaddis hire from Miami. He's a good value for Maryland for sure. I don't know that I think he's going to be more balanced than they were, say, even at Michigan and maybe even Miami. I think they are going to lean into throwing the football, which they've been pretty successful at the last couple seasons. Again, like, we're going to find out a lot about where they sit offense, where Ohio State's defense sits. Purdue, you've got a totally new look here, with, the new head coach in there. Look, Ryan, as I go back in, Ryan Walters did a tremendous job, with that Illinois defense. I'm excited for where, Purdue's defense could be maybe in a year or two. I think they're likely to improve on where they were last year. I don't think they're necessarily going to turn out to be a top defense. Graham Harrell's your new offensive coordinator at Purdue. I don't think Graham Harrell's a great offensive coordinator. He's pretty good, and they're going to throw the football around. And this, again, we will find out a lot about where the offense, where the Ohio State passing, defense is coming into this game, out of this game. Again, like, Ohio State should be a lot better here. The one watch out here is, like, I really do think Walters is one of the better defensive minds in all of college football. If he manages to put together a great game plan, this could be a sneaky trap game for the Buckeyes. It's at Purdue. But, keep an eye on it, barring, a disaster. It should be fine. Penn State's the game that, like, where, things might be, again, like, a little bit closer. Penn State, I was skeptical a little bit of the Manny Diaz hire, replacing Brent Pry. He did really well in his first season there. I expect the Penn State defense to continue to be pretty good. This is the game. I mean, and look, you can talk yourself into, like, the Notre Dame game is probably going to tell us a lot about where Ohio State's run game is. This is the game where we're going to find out a lot about the Ohio State offense. Penn State's really had a pretty good game plan against the Buckeyes. Against their offense the last couple seasons. I'm interested to see where this one shakes out. If you're an Ohio State fan, you really need to see them come out in this game and be able to do what they want, largely. Here, I think that if they come into this game and they struggle again offensively, they struggle to run the football, they're depending on the passing game, that's a bad sign. Meanwhile, like, Drew L.R. steps in. Mike Yurcich is the offensive coordinator at Penn State. They've struggled to really get it going offensively, really since Joe Moorhead was there. So maybe L.R. is the key that unlocks the offense a little bit. That's really been their problem, is the offense. So if they can get it going offensively, they're likely to be a little bit more pass first and run first. And again, like, that could make this game kind of interesting here. That's a game that could be closer. This could be down around a touchdown by the time it opens. Wisconsin. Look, Luke Fickell's a terrific coach. He made an interesting offensive coordinator hire in Phil Longo, the all home run offense. But guess what? Phil Longo likes to now look, I will say, like, at North Carolina, Phil Longo just he likes to swing for the fences. He does not care whether it's throwing the football or running the football. There are years you go back and you look at a Phil Longo offense, and they are real heavy pass, but they're all explosive plays. And then the next year they are, real heavy run, but again, they're all explosive plays. It's just a home run heavy offense. It's not the most efficient offense. It's in some ways maybe even not even designed to ever end up in the right. It's at its best 30 yards out. But like, Fickell is, look, I expect him to clean up some of what, Wisconsin fell off with. You just really feel like the staff last year really lost the kids. I expect the defense to be pretty good. And I expect the offense to improve, over where they were. I don't know that this is like they're going to be some sort of like massive challenge to, Ohio State in this game. Like, this game should not be too close. Rutgers, Kirk Shiraka is the offensive coordinator at Rutgers. He's doing a tour of the Big Ten. I don't expect Rutgers to be particularly good. This game should not be close. Look, I'm not that sold on Michigan State. I like Scotty Hazelton, their defensive coordinator. But I don't think Jay Johnson's all that at offensive coordinator. I didn't like the hire when it was made. I thought they were lucky the they won all those games. And they were. And I think we saw them come back to earth last year. This team is there. Ohio State should be able to roll pretty handily here. I don't think Michigan State's offense is necessarily a problem. But again, like, I think Scotty Hazelton, who's a good defensive coordinator, is going to be able to improve the Michigan State defense again. At least he should. Otherwise, he's probably somebody we have to talk about, maybe being in above his level at Michigan State. But this is another one where, like, you really want to see, like the Penn State game, like the Notre Dame game, you want to see them be able to come in and run the football, and be able to put up some really good offensive numbers, not just taking advantage of the field position, but actually putting up big plays and posing there well. Minnesota, Joe Rossi had the defense actually in a good place last season. Offensively, I'm not sold on what the Gophers are doing. I mean, look, this could potentially be a close game for a little bit, but Ohio State should pull away. Michigan, the game for all the marbles. Look, I mean, if Ohio State's not, putting up huge offensive numbers, if it's the same Ohio State offense we saw last season and largely the year before, I think that this game is tight. And I think maybe Michigan has the advantage in that game, in the game, right? Like, I think Knowles is going to have the defense, significantly improved. Michigan's got a new play caller on offense. Mileage may vary with that. We've talked about that. I mean, that does add a little bit of uncertainty to what we think about the Wolverines. But, Ohio State, I think if you're going to come into the big house as the favorite team, they need to be offensively really clicking by the time we get to this game. And they defensively, of course, they've just got to have more answers than they had last season when they really got exposed. I mean, like, Michigan had a really good game plan and really put it together against them, in that game and took advantage of what Ohio State took advantage. I mean, Michigan found a way to absolutely exploit the Buckeyes' terrible pass defense. Which I wasn't expecting coming into the game. Anyway, the Buckeyes, I mean, again, like, should be in good position to make a playoff run. There's nothing before that Michigan game, unless the offense again has really come back to earth. There's nothing along here that, barring like a 3 turnover night or, -2 on turnovers to Penn State and really stubbing your toe, or maybe you get out game planned, where they should be in real trouble. They should be able to come into this, into the showdown of Michigan undefeated again. And everyone will be watching. Oop. So that's it. That's the Buckeyes. I've rambled on. I'm excited to see this team. I mean, look, we're going to talk about Florida State. I think the team that is probably, like, the teams that's done it, that has put up really big offensive numbers, the most recently is Tennessee last season. And yeah, they had a bad game against Georgia for sure. But Tennessee's defense has been since Heupel got there, has been the sort of improving, lagging unit. Like the Buckeyes last season, they stepped up and got into the top 30. Let me confirm that, where they were last season. So they got to 23. So the Buckeyes sat at 19. Tennessee got to 23. For them to really, make the big, the step forward, they need their defense to improve. But this is where we're talking about. This is where the kind of exciting uncertainty about this season lies, right? Like, we've got a couple of teams that I think are going to be really good. I don't think that they're going to be like, they're not going to be in the realm where they're going to be just like obliterating teams like, some of the teams we saw in like 2019, 2020. You could argue 21 with Georgia, and then even last season, I mean, because Georgia's defense was like the 2019 Clemson was just excellent. I think even with even last season with Georgia's offense combined with another really, really good, not great, but really, really good defense from the Bulldogs. They're just not going to, those teams are going to be a little more back to earth, right? Like, they're, the Georgia's going to come back to earth a little bit. That opens things a little bit, but like, what could change that, which could close the door and say, no, Brian Kelly, you're not going to get there. This offense is not going to be enough, or no to Jim Harbaugh, and the offense that he runs, it's not going to be enough. would be Ohio State or Tennessee or Texas. I'm a little more skeptical that USC can put together the kind of defense to get there. But buddy, Lincoln Riley and Cliff Kingsbury on the same staff should be against the law. Like, so I like USC is the type of team, and I think they added some more interesting pieces again, some in the portal too. Look, Texas is a team too. Like, I think Texas, not only the defense has been improving, again, we're going to talk about, like, I think that their defense gets them in the range, to where if the offense explodes, but Texas needs a quarterback. I mean, they got enough 5-stars on the roster, but Ewers was not it last season. And we'll see if he's it this year, and he's got it figured out. But, man, down the back stretch, and we'll talk about it when we preview Texas not too far off, he stunk by the standards of what they needed, and he held that team back. Anyway, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're in good position, even if you don't figure it out on offense and put up huge numbers. You're in really good position to be competitive for a national title next season. What you have the opportunity for, which, like, the 3 teams we've previewed before this don't, is, like I said, like, you just have a higher ceiling if Ryan Day can get it figured out on offense again. So, I mean, I say that fully expecting, I expect the defense to get back in the top 10 this season. I expect them to figure it out. I think Knowles is a really, really good defensive coordinator, and they should be able to get back in there. So if that's the case, then, like, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're going to be hanging around. You're going to be, the question is if you're solid or excellent. And that all depends on the offense. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. All right, I'm Rob Bowron, the econometric and econometrician behind BetaRank. You can find all the stats and a whole lot more at sharpcollegefootball.com. You can find me at BetaRankFB on Twitter. I promise I'll try to reply. I'm just not commenting on. There's just so much dumb on Twitter. You can also find me at Sharp College Football. We have a Pac-12 podcast at 12 Pac Radio. We'll be kicking that off again and doing previews. You can find all the back episodes of that at sharpcollegefootball.com/12 Pac Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. Up next, I believe, is Florida State. Their return, was sneaky good, particularly on offense last season. But and is also another team we talk about, like, the defense has been improving, but they return a ton. They are number 1 in Bill Connolly's returning production coming into the season. Really fun team to preview. I'm excited to talk about the Noles. Somebody not Clemson in the ACC for the first time in a long time.